Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Friday Crime Club. I'm your host, Joey, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for having me. Here, the plan is to meet up every Friday and discuss true crime cases, new, old, well-known, lesser-known, so if that is something that you like, then please join us. Today we're going to be discussing one of my pet cases, one of the cases that first got me into true crime, and is one that I truly hope will get solved during my lifetime. And that is the case of Brian Shaffer, who disappeared when he was 27 back in 2006. But before we start, if you like what you see, you like what you hear, then please like, subscribe, do the whole thing. And if you're ready, then why don't we just jump into this case, shall we? So Brian Randall Shaffer was born on February 25th, 1979, which would make him 45 today. He disappeared when he was 27 on April 1st, 2006 in Columbus, Ohio. He was born in Pickerington, Ohio, which is about 20 minutes outside of Columbus. He had a younger brother, Derek, and his parents were named Randy and Renee. He graduated high school in 1997, later attending Ohio State University, earning a degree in microbiology. He later pursued more studies at the OSU College of Medicine, being a student there at the time of his disappearance. He was actually a second-year med student, and he was on his way to become a doctor. During his second year at the College of Medicine, his mother is diagnosed and later dies of a rare form of bone cancer. He was really close with his mom. At one point, he even wrote on his MySpace profile, "Doing things with my mom, who was the greatest, most wonderful person in the world." He also said that she was his only hero. Renee died at 51. His MySpace profile also provided an insight into his world. I've seen some sources say that Brian didn't want to become a doctor, that it wasn't his end goal, that he wanted to buy an island, live on a beach. The way I read his MySpace profile, I don't know if I truly believe that. The way I read it kind of made it sound like it was tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but that's just my opinion. His About Me section on his MySpace profile, he said, "I am a second-year medical student at Ohio State University, only 2 years to go. I have an awesome and amazing girlfriend. She's super hot and lots of fun. I really love music, and this whole doctor thing is really just a job, only temporary, until I get my band together and put out a record. I want to own an island someday, or at least a beach so I can listen to Buffett all day and drink margaritas with my senorita. I play guitar, I also have lots of talents, and it would take too long to list them, and English is not one of them. If you have any medical questions, feel free to send them to me, although right now I don't know much about medicine, but the only way to learn is from mistakes, right? So why not?" So that kind of seemed to jive with what I read was Brian's personality. It was also reported that he was very funny, very charismatic, and very outgoing, and he was also described by friends as free-spirited, intelligent, and a jokester. While he was in medical school, he started a relationship with another med student, Alexis Wagoner. It was considered serious enough that Alexis and some family members actually thought that Brian was going to propose later that year. They had a trip planned to Miami the Monday after his disappearance, and that trip was actually a Christmas gift from his mother, Renee. So March 31st was a Friday. It was the last day before spring break started. Brian actually called his brother Derek and asked him if he wanted to join him for dinner, but Derek and his now wife had plans to go to a comedy club, and so he declined. So instead, Brian invited his dad to dinner, and they went to Outback Steakhouse. And it was there that Randy actually gave Brian a $4,500 check to pay for his school, but Brian never deposited it. Randy would actually later state that Brian seemed tired. Randy actually chalked that up to Brian cramming for his exams the week before, and so he didn't say anything to Brian about it. Brian had made plans with one of his friends, Clint Florence, to meet up at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. So Randy didn't say this to Brian, but he actually thought that Brian was too tired to go out with Clint. But like I said, he didn't say anything, and so Brian, after dinner, went and met up with Clint at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. But Brian did make plans to meet up with his dad the day after at his house to clean the house a little bit and box up some stuff belonging to Renee, who had died just 3 weeks earlier. So Brian had actually invited Derek to go to the Ugly Tuna Saloon as well, but the comedy club that he and his girlfriend Maureen, now wife, went to actually ran late, and so Derek decided against going with Brian, which is something that he regrets to this day. So at 9 p.m. Brian meets up with Clint at the Ugly Tuna Saloon. It was located at the South Campus Gateway Complex on High Street in Columbus. They went bar hopping from the Ugly Tuna Saloon to other bars down the Arena District, and at every stop they had a shot of hard liquor. So Brian and Clint were actually roommates at some point, but Brian had moved out before the lease was up, and at the time of his disappearance he was living on his own in his own apartment. At 9:56 p.m. Brian called Alexis. She was visiting her parents in Toledo. I think there was a medical issue with one of her pets, and Brian told her that he was excited about the trip that they were going to take to Miami on Monday. So around midnight, Brian and Clint met up with one of Clint's friends, Meredith Reed, and she actually drove them back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon and later joined them as well. All three of them are captured on security camera entering the bar. And the way the bar is made up, from what I can gather, is it's located on the second floor, so you actually have to go up the escalator to get into the bar, which is where the security camera the security camera is kind of in the hallway where the escalator leads, and then the bar is on that floor. And from what I understand, there's the bar and there's a movie theater across from it, but that's all there is on that floor. So it's at this bar that Brian is last seen. He's separated from Clint and Meredith at this point, and when the bar closes at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith try to call Brian on his cell phone, but it goes straight to voicemail. And so they wait outside for him, trying to call him still, and they realize that Brian is not there, and they figured that he went home on his own back to his apartment, and so they leave. And that's the last time that anybody hears from Brian. So all weekend, Randy, Brian's dad, and Alexis, Brian's girlfriend, repeatedly try calling him, but he doesn't answer. They didn't worry too much at the time because Brian had done this before, just not answering his phone all the time. But on Monday, when he was supposed to catch a flight to Miami with Alexis and he didn't show up, that's when they called the police and filed a missing persons report. The police began their search pretty much immediately. They started at the Ugly Tuna Saloon. So the bar had cameras outside, and the police looked at them, and they saw that at 1:15 a.m., Brian, Clint, and Meredith were seen going up the escalator to the bar. Brian was seen again after that around 1:55 a.m. outside the bar on the second floor near the escalators. The camera doesn't show Brian leaving the bar after the bar closed, but the police have said on record that everyone is accounted for. Everyone that, from what I understand, the police looked at the cameras, and everybody that was seen on the camera going in were seen going out, except Brian. I'm assuming there was also an elevator as well, but there was no mention of that I could find on the internet, so I'm assuming that everybody who went there, if there was a camera who went through the elevator, was accounted for there as well, and as well as any other exits. Initially, the investigators saw that it was possible that maybe Brian had brought a change of clothes to the bar, so that's why he wasn't seen going back out of the bar, because he sort of hid his appearance. But I don't know what to make of that, because if the police on one hand say that everybody is accounted for, how can they say that Brian might have changed his appearance? Wouldn't that mean that they still had him on camera though, and they would know that he changed his appearance? I don't know. They also thought that it might be possible that Brian left through a service door. This door reportedly led to a construction area. I've seen different reports about how much of a construction area this actually was. I don't know if it was fairly new. I've read some articles that said that the construction was mostly done. There's some wiring left to do. Some officers also stated that this construction area would have been hard for a sober person to walk through, let alone a drunk person, so they didn't think that Brian went through there. The officers also thought that if he did make his way through there somehow, that it was possible that the cameras that were stationed there missed him as well, because one of the cameras was actually panning the whole time, and one was set up manually, so he didn't show up on any of them either. There was also a service elevator that led outside. There was no camera from the bar that pointed at that elevator, but there were 3 bars close that had security cameras, and you could see that elevator. And the police confirmed that nobody came out of that elevator that night. I've also read online that some people theorize that Brian might have fallen down that freight elevator, but he would have been found, I would imagine, if that was a possibility. So I don't think that happened. At some point, it was also reported that the police wanted to speak to someone that was seen on security video going up the escalator. He was dressed in orange, but he was quickly ruled out as having anything to do with the disappearance. The police also used police dogs to aid in their search. They looked in the streets, dumpsters, waste containers, but they didn't find any trace of Brian at all. I read also online that the dogs followed his scent to a nearby Wendy's. However, I don't know if that is confirmed, but I just wanted to point that out anyways. They also asked local residents if they had seen anything at all, and they started distributing flyers. The city of Columbus also let the police look into the sewers. They didn't find any trace of him there as well. Local taxis were contacted as well because the police thought that maybe Brian had took a taxi to go somewhere that night, but they came up empty there as well. So since they didn't find any trace of Brian at all, the police started thinking that maybe it was possible that he voluntarily disappeared, at least temporarily. His mom had died just 3 weeks prior, so they thought that maybe that was a factor. So from the jump, everyone involved, everyone close to Brian, were asked to take a lie detector test, and everybody did. Randy, his brother, his girlfriend, Meredith, except Clint. He was asked, but he refused, and he actually got a lawyer fairly quickly, which some people theorize on the internet. There's a lot of people that theorize that that is suspicious. Even Brian's brother and Brian's girlfriend think the same thing as well. I don't know. I don't know how suspicious that is. Is he hiding something? I don't know. With all of the shows that I've seen and all of the movies that I've seen and all of the true crime that I've looked into, first of all, lie detector tests are not admissible in court. They're not accurate. They're not reliable. So I don't know if it shows guilt by not taking one. I don't know if I would take one if police asked me, because it can lead to so much trouble. And actually, I'd like to know where you stand on that. It was later confirmed that the 2 girls that Brian talked to the night of his disappearance were never asked to take lie detector tests by the police for reasons unknown. But they were also ruled out. So after Brian's disappearance, Alexis actually called Brian's phone every night for a long time after his disappearance, and it would always go straight to voicemail, except one time where it rang 3 times. Singular, Brian's cell phone provider at the time, actually said that that was most likely a computer glitch, but it was later reported that Brian's phone had actually pinged multiple times in the first 30 days of his disappearance, about 20 kilometers outside of Columbus. And I also read that it was actually from what I understand, I don't know much about cell phone towers, but I read that the police actually paid Singular to throw or to send signals to Brian's phone, and that's when it would ping. meaning that Brian's phone would have been turned on at least at those times to be able to receive the pings. And not long after Brian's disappearance, his apartment was actually broken into and some DVDs were stolen. The police said that this had nothing to do with Brian being missing because there was also some reports of other break-ins around the vicinity as well. So it was ruled out as having anything to do with his disappearance. So Pearl Jam was Brian's favorite band. He actually had a tattoo of the band's logos. And Eddie Vedder, the lead singer, they were doing a concert in Cincinnati, and during the concert, he actually asked the audience if they had any tips regarding Brian's disappearance. And they did receive tips, which I thought was really amazing, but none of them proved useful. And can I also say that I think it's so great that he did that at one of his concerts? He didn't need to, but I think that shows great character. I think that's really great. There were also reported sightings of Brian in Michigan, in Texas, and in Sweden, but none of them proved useful as well. His friends and family also started a website called Find Brian Shaffer, but as of 2022, the website is now defunct, but you can still see it if you go on archive.org. Randy searched hard for his son. At one point, he actually contacted a psychic, and that psychic told him that Brian was in a body of water. So Randy, Derek, and volunteers actually searched the Olentangy River, but they didn't find anything. And I know that psychics have a reputation, and I don't know what to make of them, but yeah. And this hit me hard when I read this, but Randy would actually, sometimes he would call the sergeant on the case, John Hurst, in the middle of the night, sometimes as early as 3 a.m, just to ask if they had any updates. And this is really sad, but I also read that sometimes he would call just because he needed a friend to talk to who understood. Yeah. But in September of 2008, 2 years after Brian's disappearance, Randy was in his yard, and there was a storm. He was cleaning the yard when he was struck by a fallen branch, and sadly he died. His neighbors found him the day after when he didn't show up for work. His obituary was posted online, and you could actually leave comments on his obituary. And there was one comment that attracted a lot of attention, and it read, "To Dad, love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands." The police investigated, but they found that the computer that it was left from was actually located in Ohio, and it was a public computer that anybody could use. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I don't know if it's like the conspiracy theorist in me, not that I'm much of one, but the police reportedly ruled out that it was Brian because of where the computer was located. But I'm wondering, was there security footage of that person? Did they see who that person was, or did they just trace the IP address? Because I'm wondering, so it's most likely that it's not Brian, but if the police were actually on the right track when they said that he disappeared voluntarily, could it be possible that it was Brian? And I'm saying that if there was no security footage, could it be possible that it was Brian that left that message on that public computer in Ohio, and he put U.S. Virgin Islands on there to throw people off on where he was? That's what I would do. But anyway, the police, maybe they're just not saying, maybe it's just not public, I don't know, but they said that it was left on a public computer in Ohio, and so they ruled it out. Neil Rosenberg, Clint's lawyer, he wrote to Don Corbett, who was one of the private investigators who volunteered to help after Brian disappeared, and he said that he learned that the police actually believed that Brian is alive. And Neil said, if Brian is alive, which is what I'm led to believe after speaking with the detective involved, then it is Brian and not Clint who is causing his family pain and hardship. Brian should come forward and end this. And this is actually in response to accusations that Clint knew more than what he was saying. Clint, he actually spoke on this, and he said that he had nothing to hide, that he spoke to the police immediately after Brian disappeared, and that he simply just told them everything that he knew, and he didn't feel the need to do so again. And a lot of Brian's friends and family actually accuse Clint of not being forthcoming. Brian's brother Derek actually believes that Brian is still alive and that Clint knows where he is, but he's not saying. Alexis, on the other hand, she believes that Brian is dead, but that Clint knows what happened and he's not saying. Alexis has now gone on to say that looking back, it was odd that Brian, before he disappeared, he actually told her to move on and find somebody else because he was having a hard time dealing with his mother's death. Now, remember, Renee, Brian's mother, she died just 3 weeks before Brian disappeared. So what he told Alexis happened right before he disappeared. So it seems like his mother's death, obviously, it was his mother. It seems like he was taking it hard, and maybe a little bit harder than he let on to his friends and family. And at some point, Brian had actually asked Alexis to run away with him, but she said no. Brian said that she would leave him eventually because, and I quote, he didn't know when he would get better. And this is not the first time that Brian actually ran away. In his first year of med school, he actually took a trip to the Caribbean, and he didn't tell anybody until he actually landed there. In recent years, the police still receive around 2 tips a month, but none of them prove useful. Today, they still have billboards of Brian in Columbus. The Ugly Tuna Saloona actually closed down in April of 2018. The reasons cited being a disagreement over the lease. In 2019, the case went a little viral. A picture of a homeless man in Tijuana started making the rounds because people were saying that the man looked like Brian. A news station in Columbus actually sent that picture to the detective on the case, and he sent the picture to the FBI so that they could do facial recognition, but they confirmed that it wasn't Brian. In March of 2021, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation released an age progression of Brian at age 42. The podcast Brian Shaffer, Dead or Alive by Kelly Bruce, she actually interviewed John Hurst, and he said that Brian's phone pinged in Hayward, Ohio after he went missing. And that was actually months before Alexis called Brian's phone, where it rang 3 times. And John also mentioned that Brian was experimenting with his sexuality, and that maybe there was something between him and Clint. But that's all speculation. But I don't know if that's speculation or if there's something confirmed. So I don't really want to speculate too much, but I did want to mention it because he did mention it on the podcast. And he also said that at some point in the security footage that there was a jump cut, which could open up a lot of theories. But that hasn't been confirmed officially as well. He also said that there was an employee that was sitting at the emergency exit all night at the bar, and he didn't see Brian or anybody go through that door that night. The sergeant thinks it's strange that he would disappear right before his vacation if it was voluntarily, and I tend to agree as well. And one of the things that makes me, I guess, doubt the voluntarily missing theory is would Brian disappear right before taking a trip that his mother got him as one of her final gifts for him before dying? I don't know. I feel like, and that's just me putting myself in his shoes. I don't know if I would want to, I guess for a lack of a better word, waste that trip. Because it was the last gift that my mother gave me. I would want to, I would love to take that trip as a way to honor her, I guess. And I mean, just because it was a gift from her, I wouldn't take that for granted. But I don't know, that's just my opinion. And remember, the police said that everybody was accounted for, but I don't know how accurate that is. Like, could they have missed him? Could they have counted the same person twice? I don't know. If cameras did miss him and they accounted for everybody else, what are the chances that the one person that they missed is the one person that disappeared? So Derek is still looking for his brother. He's been mostly silent in the last years, but Derek still wears a green missing person bracelet with his brother's name on it. Alexis is now married. She got married in 2009 and she has 2 kids, and she works as an OBGYN. Clint moved to Virginia and he now works at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases full-time. He's married as well. So I'd like to know what your theories are. Do you think he's alive? Do you think he was murdered? Do you think he ended his life? Or maybe you think that he died of misadventure, either because he was drunk or because he fell somewhere in the construction area. What do you think? I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. I'm torn. I'm not sure what to think. I tend to think, or maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think he's still alive. He did mention that he wanted to live on an island on the beach. So I hope that's what he's doing. I don't know Brian, so I don't know what he was like as a person, really. I don't know what to make of the fact that if he left voluntarily, I don't know what to make of the fact that he would leave without telling anybody and saying goodbye, and right before his mother's trip that she paid for. But I hope that's what he's doing. I hope he's still alive. And if he is, I wish him all the best, and I hope he's happy. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. I don't think he was murdered. If he's not alive today, then I tend to think that it was an accident, most likely, that maybe because he was drunk and he fell and he died. But then where's his body? Because he didn't go far. There's no sightings of him anywhere at all. So where is he? If he's dead, where's his body? And there's a lot of theories, especially on Reddit, that say he died at the bar and the employees just conspired to hide his body, or that the band that was playing killed him and put him in the trunk of one of the instruments. I don't think that's credible too much, because that would mean that everybody that works at the bar would have had to come to an agreement that they wouldn't say anything. And for 20 years, not one of them would have said anything. I don't know. I don't know if I buy into that. Stranger things have happened. I don't know. So Brian was last seen wearing an olive green polo short sleeve shirt with a white long sleeve shirt under it, jeans, Adidas tennis shoes, and a yellow cancer awareness bracelet. Brian was 6'2", between 160 and 170 pounds. He had hazel eyes with a dot on the iris of his left eye. He had brown hair and a tattoo on his upper right hand bicep of Pearl Jam's logo. If you have any information, please contact Detective Andre Edwards of the Columbus Police Department, Ohio at 614-645-4624 or aedwards@columbuspolice.org, or you can also contact FBI ViCAP at 1-800-634-4097 or vicap@leo.gov. So that is all the information I have on Brian. I'm really excited about what you guys think. Let's have a big discussion. I love talking about this case. So again, if you want to do this next Friday, please like, subscribe, and join me next Friday. Same time, same place. Thanks.